teachable? God, who I need to know. Are you reachable? Just how far are you willing to go? Are you humble? Oh, and are you teachable? Can you hear that little small voice in your head? Showing us where we're missing the mark. Where we're missing the mark. Like a child, we must trust and obey it. Even if no one did when you built the great ark. Lord, what teachable? How about you? I need to know. Are you reachable? Just how far are you willing to go? Are you humble? Oh, and are you teachable? Read His word, do all it says to do. If you want to live forever with Him, live forever with Him. And when you go astray, the treasure's safe. Even if God you did, then God will forgive them. God was teachable. How about you? God needs to know. Are you reachable? Just how far are you willing to go? Are you humble? Oh, and are you teachable? Or even if you're proud and puffed up man, just look at me, see how brave I am. But this one will be the meek and unpretentious man, like grandfather Abraham. Or he was teachable. How about you? God needs to know. Are you reachable? Just how far are you willing to go? Are you humble? Oh, and are you teachable?
Welcome, everyone. That was my sister Shoshana singing Are You Teachable? And it's a very fitting psalm for today's study. We are the Awakened by Yahuwah Fellowship Group in Yahuwah Almighty and Yahushua Messiah. And we're doing a study today called What Are the Ascended Masters and Aliens According to Scripture? And so we're going to start with a video clip here just for legality purposes here, so we don't keep getting notifications of taking stuff down for so-called copyright claims. So here we
You
go.
are now tuned into the truth frequency.
We are TFR.
All right, so that shows you there the FBI warning that for educational purposes we can use certain clips that would be copyrighted otherwise. Okay, so we are going to first start this study off by going to actually what are flying saucers and what could they possibly be spoken of in Scripture. But first we're going to go to a clip from the show Ancient Aliens, and they will be describing what they think are flying saucers. And then we'll be showing you from Scripture what Scripture actually says. So here we go.
The Sanskrit texts of the Hindu and Buddhist tradition talk about incredible flying craft called.
Shoshana, before we start, is my shared screen going through? I want to double check on that.
Yes, I was just asking you to put it on full screen.
Okay, no problem. I just wanted to make sure it was going through. All right.
Vimana. They're sort of a cross between a modern stealth fighter and a flying saucer. They describe several different types, including types that can travel from place to place, craft that can travel across the country, craft that can travel from planet to planet.
The ancient Indians were very clear in describing how vimanas were used for the gods to come down from their heavenly abodes to earth. Now, this is not in just one text. It's in all of the ancient Vedic texts. this discussion of flying machines. And it describes the propulsion system, it describes what they were able to do, like go really fast, become invisible. They had powerful weapons. I mean, it reads like Star Wars.
In the Indian text, Mahabharata or in the Ramayana, they are able to kind of take off without having to run. So it's not like our aeroplanes. It is something that can hover, it can fly. The Vimanas are circular in shape, so they're pretty much like the flying saucer.
There are other things that were observed by our ancestors here on Earth. We have descriptions of some of these vehicles being involved in battles. They were able to fly incredibly fast. They had weapons on these machines with which to shoot down other Vimanas.
Many of the Sanskrit texts on Vimanas speak of using mercury as part of their propulsion. And this would be exactly what NASA is planning to use right now. An ion thruster type spacecraft, which is using solar energy to charge mercury particles that are discharged from the back of the craft, giving it thrust.
Yeah, and so that's pretty much all we really need to show from that video. It's only 3 minutes anyway. Basically, they're talking about these flying saucers, what you see in the sky, that people recorded UFOs and stuff like that. Okay, what's interesting too is they say that these are things that were used by the lowercase gods, which I believe is actually referring back to the angels and fallen angels. In Psalms 82, I don't have it typed up here, but Psalms 82, you can look for yourself. Literally, Yahuwah calls his sons Elohim in plural, talking about the angels. So when you see these other religions talking about the lowercase gods, according to Scripture, that would be Yahuwah's angels. And some of them rebelled and started becoming worship, but not trying to get too much on a tangent here. We're going to go here and show you what UFOs are and flying saucers are according to Yahuwah's word and according to reality. So we're going to go to the book of 2 Kings, I believe here, chapter 6, verse 17 to 18. And after this, we will be showing a video clip of this lady that was spoken to by Werner von Braun and how that connects to the wars and stuff that they were talking about in that video clip. So be patient. We're going to get to that. But I first want to read this here in 2 Kings chapter 6, verses 17 to 18. And it says, "And Elisha prayed and said, Yahuwah, I pray thee," meaning I pray you, "open his eyes, that he may see. And Yahuwah opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. And when they came down to him, Elisha prayed unto Yahuwah and said, Smite this people, I pray thee, with blindness. And he smote them with blindness, according to the word of Elisha." So I would presume that possibly what we're told UFOs are and these flying crafts like the Vimana, I believe Scripture tells us that these are the chariots of fire that the Malachim would have. So that's why I brought up 2 Kings chapter 6, verses 17 to 18. Next, we will be going to another video that my sister Shoshana actually notified for me to use for this study and to show about the deception of this so-called alien war. So please listen to what this lady has to say. This lady spoke to Werner von Braun, who supposedly, I guess, was, depending on who you listen to, supposedly he was like a Nazi, supposedly. And he would have had inside information. He was like a former Nazi, according to what I've researched.
Good morning.
morning. My name is Carol Rosen. In 1974, after being a sixth grade school teacher, I was introduced to the late Dr. Wernher von Braun in the U.S., the father of rocketry. In my first meeting with him, during that first 3.5 hours, he said to me, Carol, you will stop the weaponization of space. And I said, teachers don't stop until June. He said, no, you have to understand, this is February, and we have to prevent the weaponization of space because there is a lie being told to everyone that the weaponization of space is now first being based upon the evil empire, the Russians. There are many enemies, he said, against whom we're going to build this space-based weapon system, the first of whom was the Russians, which was existing at that time. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be third world countries. Now we call them rogue nations or nations of concern. Then there would be asteroids. And then he would repeat to me over and over, and the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat. Well, at the time, I kind of laughed when he said asteroids, and when he said extraterrestrials, I knew I wasn't going to deal with that subject. And now we hear in the news just today, this week, that they've slid in another enemy. Only this time we're going to protect our satellites. In other words, we have to have some reason to spend these trillions, to waste these dollars on a space-based weapon system, and they're all lies. This is a system, he told me, that would never protect anyone. Even back then, he talked about suitcase bombs. He talked about chemical, viral, bacterial, biological warfare, that these space-based weapons would never protect us against. And then he told me that, in fact, if you travel around the world, which I did after he died in 1977, I met with people in over 100 countries who were friends. They didn't want to build space-based weapons. I became a space and missile defense consultant. And I worked with people around the world. I became an advisor to the People's Republic of China. They don't want to build a space-based weapon system. And he told me back then that they didn't. He said, go to Russia. They're considered to be the enemy. I got on a plane by myself. When I got to Russia, I had a list of people that I had read out of the newspaper. Chernenko was in office then. He was the only one I didn't get a chance to meet. They introduced me to everyone when I got there. And when I got back, I said, oh my Lord, this man is telling the truth. There is no threat. And I've been waiting until this day for 27 years, and I'm expecting the spin to happen, because he also explained to me that as a military strategist, as a person who worked on the MX missile, which I did later, he said, you will find that there is going to be a spin to find some enemy against whom we have to build space-based weapons. And now we should expect the spin, because he said part of the formula for the intelligence community is if they might have a weapon, then we have to consider that they do have these weapons. So now they do have these weapons, so now we have to build these weapon systems. And that's the formula, except that it's all based on a lie. And we have witnesses here today that have shown you that these extraterrestrial beings, that these craft that have come here are now not UFOs, they're identified flying objects, and we know that they have beings in them. And we have witnesses here who have told you that they can shut down our missile silos, they can stop a rocket going into space that's a test. We have witnesses here who have worked in the classified departments, who have the courage to come forward here to support what Wernher von Braun told me back in 1974 to 77. And I will testify before the Congress that when I founded the Institute for Security and Cooperation in Outer Space, which I shut down a few years ago because I didn't believe we had a chance with this huge, integrated around the world, complex weapon system, that we had any chance at all of transforming that war industry into a space industry that could provide benefits, like Dr. Greer has said, of global warming. We can end that situation of that problem. We can end the energy crisis. We can build now non-polluting technologies. Wernher von Braun used to tell me that we could have cars back then that drove around off the ground. He described this to me on beams, so that we have no pollution on this planet. And we can solve the problems of the people that are urgent and potential, and the other animals and the other cultures on Earth and in space. And we can end the arms race without dislocating the industry jobs, without disrupting the economy, by transforming, Wernher von Braun told me, the war industry into a global cooperative space industry that will provide, he said, finally, more jobs and profits on this planet than during any hot or cold wartime, more products and services that can be applied directly to solving the problems of this planet. And we can have a whole planet now that lives in peace on Earth, with all the cultures on Earth, and with all the extraterrestrial cultures in space. And these are words that Wernher von Braun told me in 1974. And I will testify before the Congress under oath about everything I have said and more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank each of the witnesses and for your patience.
All right, so just to explain a little bit what she's saying, because she said a lot. I believe biblically we can take this info, this real info that she's given us, and understand that there's going to be a staged event. There's going to be what looks like, what appears like, you're going to have so-called good aliens and evil aliens battling one another in the sky. And it will look like that it's this huge war that we have to be involved in and we have to help the good ones. In reality, they're both on the same side. It will be a way to deceive the masses and a way to bring upon the religion of the anti-Messiah. It will be given in a way that people will think that these other aliens are, you know, they're nice, they're here to protect us. Kind of what's put forth in the Transformers movie. You have the Autobots versus the Decepticons. Same thing, you know, they're both Transformers. So it's the same type of Hegelian. It's called in Freemasonry and the Gnostics, they call it the Hegelian dialectic. The yin and the yang. It's both of them are evil, but one is portrayed as good, basically, to put it in layman's terms. So let's see. I think we're going to move on here and now get to another aspect of this study. So we did the flying saucers, we did the last card now. So let's see what other stuff we have to show. Okay, so we got, I think what we want to do too is show, this is videos called Mythology and the Great Deception. We're going to show a little clip here that will kind of transition to us into the Ascended Masters and what's known as the lowercase gods in your modern translations of the Bible. In Psalms 82 and all that, and how the gods of antiquity actually connect with the fallen angels and all that. So, let's see here.
The purpose of this presentation is to examine mythology and the gods of the ancient world from a biblical perspective. All images, video, and audio clips contained in this video are presented for critical examination and educational purposes only.
Zeus, Surya, Thor. For thousands of years, ancient myths have described gods who came down from the heavens.
Always you have someone who is descending from the sky with loud noise, with thundering, with fire, with smoke.
They would have come from the most powerful and magical place possible, from the stars.
But just who were these mystical beings that ruled the skies with supernatural powers?
You could wonder if these tales of Zeus's thunderbolt, Thor's hammer, if these weren't real weapons.
Did our ancient ancestors create the gods from their own imaginations? Or did they simply report events they believed to be true?
Our ancestors misinterpreted extraterrestrials.
So I want to stop there because they're going to be promoting their agenda after that point. So basically, we're going to propose this question to you, and now we're really going to get into the scripture of this study. But first, we want to propose this question. Could it be what the ancient astronauts theorists think are aliens? Could it just possibly be that the scriptures give us who they really are? Could it possibly be that millions of people in the world believe in the scriptures and believe what it say? What if the scriptures are true? What if we have what's known as demons and fallen angels? Just some question to pose for the viewers and listeners of this. So we're going to go into this and show you how some things also you should be asking yourselves, why is that all these GODs, why do they always look like humans? That's another question to ask. Why are they always portrayed as men? They look like normal mortal men, but they have weird abilities that a normal man wouldn't have. So I would say that actually goes along with what Scripture says, surprisingly. And I want to show a little clip, not a clip, but show a picture, because people will probably be looking at my screen that I was just about to show and be like, what are ascended masters? What are you talking about, Doug? According to the New Age, and this is another connection between the New Age and the Ancient Aliens TV show, ascended masters are what they call spiritual guides. And just like these false deities of the pagan religions, they are portrayed to look like human men. So again, what do we see in Scripture that shows us who can actually be portrayed as human men or come down from the skies, as that video clip talked about, and look like men? And you'll see that in Scripture many different times. The angels can appear as men, mortal men. So I am going to put this forth that possibly these ascended masters are fallen angels. They are leading people astray into another belief system, into ideas like reincarnation and all that, and all this other nonsense. So these ascended masters, in essence, are entities that people channel in the New Age, and they get into all this type of basically talking to demonic spirits. They're channeling demonic spirits. So now I want to get into the Scriptures and what they say about these beings that can appear as men, aka the messengers, the Malachim, the angels. So here we go. Fallen angels will appear as men or ascended masters to promote the false New Age religion. And I believe the New Age religion is not really too far of a concept from what the beast religion really will be. It will be false love, in my opinion. So Genesis 19:11, we're going to go there. That's the first scripture I have here. And see here, it says, right here, it says, and they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they were wearied themselves to find the door. And the men said to Lot, has you here any besides your son-in-law and your sons and your daughters, and whatsoever you have in the city, bring them out of his place. So the men who were protecting Lot and his family are actually angels, and you'll see earlier on in the chapter they're actually called angels, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, if you go all the way up to verse 1 of this same chapter, it says, and there came 2 angels to Sodom at evening, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. So when they're coming to Lot probably the only way he would know that they're angels is he's given discernment by Yahuwah that they're messengers. There's no other way, because later on in the chapter it's categorizing them as men. So he would see them as mortal men. He would not know. And I believe that's why Paul says that we might entertain angels unawares. I believe that's why Paul says that. So here you have in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 2, entertaining angels unawares, and what that could be hinting to. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 2 reads as, "Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares," meaning some have entertained a stranger in your home thinking, he's a mortal just like me, a human just like me, not even realizing that it's an angel in human form, which you can find in the book of Enoch too. I mean, Enoch talks about it all the time, that they could transform into any form possible. Maybe that's why the movie Transformers has that name. Who knows? It's kind of an assumption by me why that name is the title of those movies. But 2 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 14 says that Satan can transform into an angel of light. So Satan can go back into his original form that he was known as when he was actually one of Yahuwah's two good angels. So he can actually transform into an angel of light, a messenger of light even. So, and the next one we have here is Mark chapter 16. Mark chapter 16 verses 5 to 6. The angels that Mary Magdalene, or more correctly Miriam Magdalene, saw at Yahusha's tomb looks like young men. And I have a footnote here that gives other cross references. So we'll first go to Mark chapter 16, verse 5 to 6 first. And let me just see, where are we getting feedback here? I'm noticing that from before. My bad about that, but I just noticed that. Mark chapter 16, verses 5 to 6 read as, "And entering into the sepulchre, they saw," meaning Miriam and the two Miriams that went there to see Yahusha's body at the tomb, says they saw a young man sitting on the right side, clothed in a long white garment, and they were afraid. And he said unto them, "Be not affrighted. You seek Yahusha of Nazareth, which was impaled. He is risen. He is not here. Behold the place where they laid him." So this angel is being categorized as a young man, or appeared as a young man, in Mark chapter 16, verse 5 to 6. And then you have John chapter 20, verses 11 to 14, I believe, give basically another account of the same story. So it says, John chapter 20, verse 11, "But Miriam stood without at the sepulchre weeping. And as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre. And seeing the two angels in white, white cloak, white robes, the one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Yahusha had lain." So now they go to where his body had lain, and they see two angels that look like, that are in white clothing, kind of like the same description that we just read in Mark 16, 5 to 6. And so now the last one I have here is Luke 24, verse 4. Says here, "And it came to pass, as they were much perplexed thereabout, behold, two men stood by them in shining garments." Now, what we got to understand too, when it talks about white garments and shining garments, Paul, the Apostle Paul, talks about this metaphorically as our new bodies when we get resurrected. So sometimes where you see that in shining garments, white garments, it's not actually referring to like a literal robe. So sometimes that can kind of confuse people that read the scriptures. They'll be like, "Oh, that's just talking about men in like a white robe," or whatever. So it's actually referring to angels appearing as men in white garments, basically.
It actually says glittering garments.
Depending on your translation, it will say shiny, glittering, pretty similar, yeah, glittering, shining, basically light, garments of light, a body of light. So again, that we got to understand the context of what Luke is actually talking about here. So this is talking about angels appearing as men that would have like almost like a resurrected body as a garment, basically.
And if I may, Doug, I'd like to bring out that recently, Ron Wyatt, I mean, this was in the past 20 years or so when he was alive, actually saw 4 angels guarding the Ark of the Covenant when he found the Ark of the Covenant in Jeremiah's grotto. And he knew they were angels. He doesn't say how he knew they were angels, but he knew. And these very same angels who looked like men were able to lift the lid off of the Ark of the Covenant, which Ron says was at least 450 pounds of gold. So just wanted to bring that out, that even in recent times, someone has seen angels and known that's what they were.
Yeah, I personally believe, in my opinion, he was given discernment by the Father that they were angels, because everywhere in Scripture they appear as men. So the only way to really, I guess, distinguish that they're Malachim or not, when they come into our terrestrial, that's why they're called extraterrestrials, celestial beings. So the only way we can know for sure that they're, they're not terrestrial beings would be the Father, his set-apart spirit telling you.
And by what they do, actually what they do, because later on, I guess it was the Sanhedrin that sent some men in there to recover the ark, and they were all killed. And the only person that the angels would allow to come in there is Ron Wyatt. So he had to go in there to get the bodies out. And he said every one of them, it looked like they died with their eyes crossed. And only angels could have done it because there was no physical sign of, that nobody shot them, nobody wounded them in any way. There was no physical marks on them. Only their eyes were crossed.
Wow. Yeah. All right. We only got a couple minutes left, so I'm going to try to get this little bit done. So part 2 will be mainly about what are the little green, little gray aliens, according to what Scripture says. So that will be part 2.
May I read 2 Thessalonians before you exit?
We got like 4 minutes left.
Okay, I've got time.
All right.
I'm just going to read a couple of verses, verses 3 and 4, and verses 10 through 12. Let no one deceive you in any way, because the falling away is to come first, and the man of lawlessness is to be revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called Almighty, and that is worshipped, so that he sits as Yahuwah in the Mishkan of the Almighty, showing himself that he is Yahuwah Almighty. And verse 10 says, and with all deceit of unrighteousness in those who are perishing, because they did not receive the love of the truth in order for them to be saved. And for this reason, Yahuwah himself sends them a working of delusion for them to believe the lie, the falsehood. And I believe that very lie is that the aliens created us and not Yahuwah, in order that all should be damned who did not believe the truth, but have delighted in unrighteousness.
Yeah. I agree 110%. So that was 2 Thessalonians, I believe, chapter 2, and I believe you read from, what was it, 4 to verse 10?
Verses 3 and 4 and verses 10 through 12.
All right. So, yep, so that's the strong delusion, aka what you're given into if you don't accept Yahushua Messiah. And basically it's your choice. But we got a couple more here to show you that these Malachim do appear as men. Acts chapter 1, verses 9 to 10, it says, "And when he had spoken these things while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud receiving him out of their sight. And while they looked steadfastly toward heaven as he went up, behold, 2 men stood by him in white apparel," again, shining apparel, white apparel, "which also said, You men of Galilee, why do you stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Yahushua, which is taken up from you into heaven, shall come in like manner as you have seen him go into heaven." So the angels are appearing as human men, and they're talking to the apostles, saying, the same way Yahushua ascended, he's going to descend when he returns, the same exact way. So that's one of the last ones I wanted to say, along with one verse I have from the extra biblical book of Enoch to try to fit in real quick if I can. Let me see here. Actually, you know what? We'll do that when we come back in. We got less than a minute. I'm not going to have time to find it. So thank you for listening so far and viewing so far for this study. Please stay tuned to the part 2. We will be concluding this study, and we will be getting into what exactly are these green, gray-looking aliens that are, could they possibly be the unclean demonic spirits that are spoken of in the Bible? Please stay tuned. Shalom.